All right, so let's talk about websites. Really quickly, we'll recap what we're doing. So, we're writing for a client testing one flawed website that we found that is a small scale local website or maybe a website from one of the OU departments. We are testing one participant, not two but one, and the test is going to take about 45 minutes. And we're designing a script think aloud protocol, including a homepage tour and a scenario for participants to go through eventually. Before we do all that, we got to come up with the proposal. And to come up with the proposal, we have to know how to talk to our client about websites. So let's take a look at ways to do that. So, we want to use the "Don't Make Me Think" motto as we are looking at the website and thinking about where its flaws are. So basically, web design should be obvious and self-explanatory. It shouldn't create frustration or confusion. A website should always let a user accomplish tasks as easily as possible. So when you're thinking about what is not working with a website or what a website needs to do, you need to keep this motto, "Don't make me think," in mind. If a user has to figure something out, has to maneuver through several things, has to dig around, the website is not accomplishing its goals and it's not allowing the user to accomplish tasks, especially not quickly. So this "Don't Make Me Think" is something that every designer needs to keep in mind. And when you're thinking about effective websites, they need to not make their users think. Everything needs to be Steve Jobs, Apple intuitive. All right, so let's look at what a homepage needs to look like when we're thinking about how to talk about an effective or ineffective homepage. So it needs to answer the questions: what is the website? What's the company? How can I get from here to the place I need to be? The website's homepage needs to spell out the big picture of the site. I need to know where I am, how I can get to the places that I need to. It all needs to be clear to me without being cluttered. So there needs to be clear navigation, a clear imagery and logo so I know what the company is, a search bar, needs to avoid needless words that I'm going to have to sift through as a user to get to what I want to, and it needs to resonate with the target audience. Please refer back to this as you are discussing the homepage in your proposal. If it does not do these things, it needs to be called out as you're doing the kind of flaws analysis in your proposal. Also, with this last one, resonating with target audience, this is something to keep in mind and a way to keep the proposal user-centered. You're thinking about the specific target audience, not just a generic faceless person, but the audience that this site is drawing the most and the ways that it is resonating with them or that it isn't. So the site structure. There generally should only be 3 levels of a site structure. So you have your homepage and then level 1, 2, and 3. You shouldn't be digging much further than that. You need to get to these lower level pages in an easy and obvious way. I shouldn't have to take 45 seconds to figure out how to get deeper into the site to get into more depth with what I need to. This needs to be easy to navigate and obvious. Understanding what contents belong in what section and how to get a user to that content is the most difficult part of web design, and it's something to pay attention to. Is the way the website set up in the different sections? Does it make sense? Is it going to allow the user to see that what they need falls under this section? Is it intuitive? This is really hard to figure out, so this is something to pay attention to as you're doing an analysis of the website that you've chosen. So page structure. You need to make sure that you see a clear visual hierarchy. You need to pay attention to the size, spacing, and font used to see how it creates that hierarchy and how it creates scannability. So the eyes are pulled to the most important things and that there's some kind of grouping and that there's design elements used to draw the eyes to certain places. There needs to be nesting. The pages need to be chunked into clear sections, so it's not just everything slammed together, but there are clear sections that are separate that draw the user's eyes. Needs to avoid having too much on any page. If you have clutter all over the place, there is nothing more frustrating than having to dig through that. And then be aware of content below the fold. So the fold is where the website's going to cut off. If you have really important information in the bottom half of the page, users are not going to see that when they click on it. You do not want that. So that is something to pay attention to as you're looking at the efficacy of the website. All right, and I'm not going to go through all this because you will have the PowerPoint to come back to, but here you see kind of an overall diagram of a page structure. So this is a really good kind of template to use to look at the way the structure is or is not working. Is it too crowded? Is it not grouped appropriately? Does it not have content in certain spaces that make the most sense? So you can really use this to think about what the structure should look like, or the more effective structure might be. So let's talk about navigation. So when we're thinking of navigation, I need to know where I want to go. I need to be able to see the places I want to go within navigation. Terms need to be obvious, so it needs to be clear if I'm searching for a certain thing that there's some kind of navigation tool to get me there. I need to have a search bar that I can type a word into just in case what I need is buried somewhere else and it's not quite intuitive how to get there. Navigation should stay the same across all pages. We don't want pages to go from one navigation style to the next because suddenly I'm in this whole new world and I don't know why. Navigation should tell us where we are. So we need to know when we click on a page that comes up again, we know we're in that page. If I click on news, then I know when that page comes up, it's the news page. There's something that indicates that that's clear. There's a title there. And renaming is always important as you think about usability. So these are components to look for when you think about how effective navigation is. Some more signposting. Once I'm on a page, I should be able to see the title of the specific page, which I mentioned before. There should be a visual marker of the page I'm on. So a button is lit up. There's something going on that lets me know this is the page I'm on. And I need to know the path I took to get to that page. So there needs to be a breadcrumbs trail so I can trace back where I came from and I also know how I got there. Uniformity, when I click something, the title of the button should match the title of the page I'm sent to. If it doesn't, I'm suddenly confused and I think, did I not click where I thought I did? So it's really important to have uniformity as you're moving through navigation and whenever the site is taking a user from the main page deeper into the website. And then beautification. So we want to look for uniformity using the same navigation, hierarchy scheme, titles across the entire site. Uniformity is something that we should be really familiar with as much as we've been working on different technical documents. White space. So this is something that I often say there's too much of whenever I'm looking at our documents like our instruction set earlier. But in this case, you want to give your information and images breathing room, so you want some white space. Clutter is the opposite of white space. Clutter is also not attractive and not helpful in finding anything. So the more white space on a site, generally, the more ethos a site has. Think about the best websites that you've come across. Does it usually have tons of text and images and everything right next to each other, or is it more minimal? Odds are it's minimal, right? So we're looking for sites that do have that white space. Do keep in mind, white space doesn't have to be white, right? This just means space. It doesn't mean the actual color white. It's just that there's not clusters of everything all over the place. Color scheme, it needs to be repeated, meaningful. So keep in mind, is the color scheme, does it match the logo of the company? Does it speak to the company in some way? Does it say something or speak back to it? Or does it resonate with the intended users? The goal here is to use 3 colors usually and use the 60-30-10 rule. So 60% one, 30% one, and 10% one. There needs to be a visual hierarchy and it needs to be consistent. It needs to be image driven. Nobody wants to see 7 paragraphs on a web page ever. So it needs to be very driven by images rather than text. And it needs to be scannable. Like all of our other documents, it needs to use headings, small paragraphs, pull quotes, bullets, etc. So all the information is set up in a scannable way that the user can move through quickly and easily. So these are all key points to keep in mind as you are laying out what works and what doesn't work about the website that you've chosen to do the redesign on, and also the website that you're looking at that is doing things well. So please keep all these in mind as you are doing analyses on your websites.